Hey everybody, it's Friday, July the 19th, 2024, and this is How to Restart a Church, a spin-off podcast where I, Pastor Trey Comstock, and my equally hot and sweaty colleague, Pastor Emily Larson, talk about how to make church happen, how to make church happen again. The combined temperature across our two studios is approaching 200 degrees.
Yeah, a little warm today.
It's a little warm. In this show, we complain about the weather every week.
Just about. It's either freezing or it's hot.
Either freezing or hurricanes or, the climate change, the localized climate change in our studios is a lot. On this week's show, I came across the name of an author, recommended book from last week's show where we talked about the Well Church NYC, this like really fascinating blend of like the wellness movement and a church and a Presbyterian tradition. And there's a quote from this guy, David Zahl, who wrote this book, Seculosity, How Career, Parenting, Technology, Food Politics, and Romance Became Our New Religion and What to Do About It. And I'm like, that sounds like a book we should read. And so we read it. Little background on David Zahl. He is a Christian writer for Mockingbird Ministries and the Mockingbird website, which is a kind of a Christian media thing. He's also on the staff of Christ Episcopal Church in Charlottesville, Virginia. And I realized that I have, because my wife is from Charlottesville and it's not a very large world, that I have run into David Zahl socially and just had no concept anyways. So David, the pitch on David's book, we read the whole thing. It's available as a 6-hour audiobook, which is a blessing for me. It plays on something we've talked about a lot, is that the world has not become less interested in systems of power and a desire for salvation, what we might call religion. Right. What it has moved away from, certainly in America, or certainly in what gets defined as the West, has certainly moved away from Christianity, but then all of these other things, so that just like opened up a vacuum of meaning in people's lives, right. And then other things moved in to fill that vacuum. And the point that David Zahl makes in his book is not only do these things move in to fill the vacuum, but they're just doing the exact same problematic things that religion not lived out well does, all in this vein of creating secular religion or seculosity. And David brings this up in his introduction. This is grounded in the work of a philosopher named Charles Taylor, who I had to read in seminary. It's this giant book called The Secular Age that at the root of Taylor's work and at the root of David Zahl's piece is that, look, we Christians created this secular world when we made everything about like moral transformation and gain, and not about, and what David then adds in, and not about grace. So then it became really easy for these other things that can be all about like motivation and gain and hard work. And then that can totally fill the void. And then it becomes about like demonstrating how hard you've worked and how less hard someone else works. And so that like so many things, including a lot of Christianity, has just become, how can we be a Pharisee about new and interesting and even less powerful things, right? And so for some folks, that's become dating and the idea of the perfect wedding and the perfect person. For some folks, that's food. I keep this diet, and so I'm so much better. If someone keeps a certain diet and you're with them socially, you do not need to ask them. They will tell you. Or wellness is one he brings up. Politics, right? The level of, I did a bit on passion on the scripture show this week, and which for us was like 20 minutes ago, but like I didn't bring up politics on purpose because it's a real third rail to touch right now, but the degree of passion in U.S. politics and the degree of right believer versus heretic, burn the heretics,
Yes.
is intense. And these things have moved in to fill the vacuum that religion itself, that Christian religion itself opened up by losing sight of its own actual power. And so then so many of these things, Christian practice included, just become a way of being a Pharisee and enforcing your Pharisaicalness and feeling justified in your ability to keep the law. Start to feel familiar, right? This is David's point. I'm just summarizing, but like, we just keep finding new religions of law, whether that be how well you can keep this diet, just how democratic or just how Republican you are. I was on a university campus for a really long time. The virtue signaling made meetings next to impossible because we have to talk about people. Oh no, but we can't use those words anymore. Like I get that, but Jesus Christ, I need to be able to say something. I once got in trouble, and this is getting at David's point. I said I wanted to combat we were going to do this thing to combat poverty, and then I got called out for using warlike language, and I wanted to close my laptop and go home and sit in a dark corner because I'm just like, you've proven that to me that you are far more peaceful than I am. This is a huge shock to everyone that knows me. That person was more peaceful than me. Case of precedent, no. But like, it's that like, whatever. Like there are whatever law you have subscribed to, be it parenting, which is one I find particularly exhausting in my personal life.
Yes.
This is not how I parent. And then sometimes I sit back and I watch people parenting this way, and I'm like, this $3,000 to this person is not going to save you.
Right. Well, and even so I like that he brought up like the busyness of it. It almost felt a little bit like, so, if you aren't being fulfilled unless you're busy and you have to, show people how busy you are, or how, if you're miserable, it's how miserable you are. And that's the thing that you self-aggrandize to get this secular,
I struggle with that one a lot.
Yes.
As a forever recovering work. Hello, I'm Trey, and I'm a workaholic. We're both workaholics. Let's be honest.
Hi.
But in some ways, like my work schedule is my work actual schedule is the lightest it's been in 20 years.
Yeah.
And this has really, like, I resonated a lot with that chapter as a workaholic, as the person who throughout my 20s was always the busiest of anybody I knew.
Right.
And now, all of a sudden, here I am in my late 30s.
Pushing 40s, yeah.
Pushing 40. And I'm just, for at least maybe it's a brief window and maybe it's not. I'm just not, right? Like today was relatively busy this morning and I had this recording, but like, my mom still doesn't have electricity, and so she's hanging out with Sydney and Thomas, and so like I just like went to lunch, and then my stationery was ready, and I went and picked up this is like in the middle of the day on a Tuesday,
right?
And he gets at the like, because I was the person who would like bring editing to do on vacation,
right?
And I have a whole mobile podcasting rig in part so that I can podcast from vacation,
right?
And a lot of those like signals of busyness are just absent in my life now.
Right.
And part of me I do not fully know what to do with that. This is certainly one. Parenting is not one I practice. I mean, I do parent, but not in the seculosity way. But I have been a deeply ingrained in the seculosity of busyness and career.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, I don't have that. And it's been that has been a real internal struggle for me.
I think that one spoke to me as a Methodist as well. This was, this is one of the things that John Wesley's real good at organizing, real good at making a method for all the things, right? So
he's a functioning workaholic too.
Right. We do the checklists. We do the have you done this, this, and this, right? And they used to actually have the checklist and have you done those things when you go to your meetings and your small groups and your bands, your class meetings and your band meetings. And so it is one of those things that we struggle with that. I struggle with for sure of making sure that I have a checklist to begin with, right?
Let's be clear. Like David, it's not a Methodist writer. David's like, and perfection isn't even possible. And I'm like, well, we sure do believe it is. Like John Wesley was like, not only like John Wesley.
Not only can you be perfect, but you should try to be.
Not only can you try to be perfect, if you work hard enough, you will get there.
Right.
Like
in this lifetime.
The terrible ordination question. Do you tend to reach perfection in this lifetime? We're supposed to say yes. And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So some of it is we come by this naturally.
Right.
But it is both that people are really seeking meaning.
Yes.
And we keep doing the same thing over and over again, just in different guises of like parenting. Having kids can be both a struggle and wonderful, but we turn it into a religion where there is a righteousness and like, this is the righteous way to parent. And if you don't do it this way, if you don't get this particular program, if your kid isn't hitting these specific markers with these specific things at these specific times, then you're failing, right? Is your kid sleeping enough? Is your kid sleeping too much? Is your kid on a schedule? Are you traumatizing them by putting them on a schedule, right? It all becomes like a righteousness. Like parenting, romantic relationships, taking care of your body, being productive, and making a difference in the world and providing for your family. All these things are good.
Right.
That's not the issue. The issue isn't that we're doing these things. It's that we're trying to use them as means of justification. And he uses this language really strategically. Justification.
Yes.
That we are using these things to justify ourselves.
Yes.
And you are never going to justify yourself truly with any law. Because you will always just be chasing that law.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that is not where we should seek our fulfillment, our justification, that is not where you should find your identity. But that's not who you are, but that's what you do. And changing that phrase in your head from that isn't who, you are not what you eat. You are not how you parent. You are not how busy you are. Those are the things you do. That is not your religion, right? That is not the thing that should be all of you, that should consume all of you.
You are not, and I think this is like he plays it both ways. And you are not how righteous according to God's law you have become. Right, because even in a Wesleyan conception of the world where perfection is indeed possible, like it's still a two-way journey. Right? Like sometimes you'll be making progress, but there's always the possibility that you will unmake that progress, right? Like there is both motion forward and motion backwards. It's not like snap your fingers and now we're all healed. It is like make some progress, lose some progress, and remember that even in Wesleyan's semi-Pelagian world that I am a practitioner of, it's still God's grace that makes it all possible.
Yes. That we need this religion of grace. That's where the book ends up getting towards the end, is that we need this religion of grace 100%, because we cannot fulfill ourselves through all of these things, through this seculosity.
Through the seculosity, or turning Christianity into a seculastic religion, right? Turning Christianity into just another form of seculosity, where you maybe it's not your bank balance, but it is, how elaborate is your this is Christians of Instagram, right? How elaborate is your like prayer closet, your like
war room.
morning
your war room
or your morning devotion routine, where it's the perfect lighting in the window and the soft fabrics and the coffee cup, the like funny Jesus coffee cup and the like whatever. Like if anyone who's spent any time on Christagram, has encountered this, right? Where it just becomes another way of demonstrating your own righteousness and thus demonstrating your own justification. I mean, shoot, this is what, this is Scarlet Letter. I mean, this is
Yes.
not new, by the way. This is the Puritans this is the
Yes.
the classic flaw of the Puritans is everyone was watching everybody else to figure out just how righteous they really were, right? Like the good version is like the reciprocity and we take care of each other. And the bad version is this like, we're going to watch you to make sure you are manifesting the signs that you are saved. But if you're not manifesting the signs that you are saved, we're going to stick a letter on you and make you a witch.
Right. The witch trials. All of the Salem witch trials, for example.
Right.
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just actually ended up being a way for for those girls to ban women they didn't like. It was real awful.
Yes.
We keep doing it.
Right.
And I think if we some of the he reaches his own kind of conclusions of what do we do about it. And I'm not sure I connect with all of those. For the record, it was one of them was like, hey, maybe talk about the eternal more and less about the self-improvement. And I'm like, I'm still a Wesleyan theologian, so this is a tricky trap. But I think if we, broadly speaking, if this is a show about how to make church happen and how to make church happen again, as we approach a world, it helps to know what's going on in that world.
Yes.
And that we see all of these activities that are like meaning seeking, right? He brings up Soul Cycle. We brought up Soul Cycle last week. Right. Soul Cycle was like a quasi cultish. I think it still exists, but it broke bad. There's a documentary. It's really interesting.
Yeah.
But about pushing yourself and pain and the gains and whatever. And it's about creating a new kind of righteousness and finding people that are also seeking that righteousness, which that's not necessarily a bad instinct. But you have all these things where people feel there is this absence, right? Mm-hmm. This is, read enough C.S. Lewis and you'll know what that absence, you'll have really good language for what that absence is really. But we have this absence. Mm-hmm. Humanity has this absence. Right. And a ton of things we are attempting to fill that absence with a ton of things, including unhealthy church.
Yes.
And as we approach this world with so many new forms of laws of righteousness, there is this, how do we, if we're going to do this thing called church, for us, I think it is, knowing what the world is really, knowing what's behind all of this stuff.
Yes.
And understanding what the real answer to that is, which is a religion of grace.
Yes. Yes. I think you're right. I think, and we've been saying, preachers and pastors have been saying for years that we're trying to fill this void with, the God-shaped peace that can only fill our souls. But I think that until we really do this type of study on what is the human soul searching for, and, how does one fill it, until you start to stare into those voids and ask those hard questions and to do that hard theology work, that you end up with the accidental filling of those things with seculosity, with anything else. And so I think that it is important that we as theologians, that we as Christians, that we who know this answer, right? We know the right answer for the test, whether we follow it or not, right? We're all guilty of choosing other things sometimes. But since we do know, the answer, which is this religion of grace, that just puts more of an impetus on us to make sure that we are offering the world this religion of grace. That we are showing that in every form and facet that we can.
Well, and I think going back to, I think we didn't pick it this way; it just worked out this way. But I think the scripture from the scripture show, from Tuesday's show,
they don't always line up so well, but this one really, really did.
This one really does, because to David's point, this can't just be another instruction. This can't just be, another righteousness,
yes,
another law, the law of, well, we must proclaim a religion of grace. Right, because that is, you know, there's like this trap that even he in some ways falls into of seculosity, of the secular age, where like you always then want to advise, right? Like he's just like, here's what's happening, and then even the title of the book is "and what to do about it." And in some ways, that's all. As soon as we jump to then what to do about it, we're creating a new righteousness. We're creating a new law. We're creating a new thing, right? Like when I took preaching in the secular age, which is grounded in the same kind of theoretical basin, you know, what Professor Campbell would say is like, you could just say God is. You don't have to say God is and then da 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 da. You do not actually have to. You do not have to add it and therefore. You don't have to turn this into a lesson. It is enough that God is.
Yes.
Right, and there was a church in Palestine called God Is Baptist Church. And we always wondered, is it God Is Baptist Church? Is God Baptist? Is that what we're saying? In which case, I'll admit I have some quibbles. Or is it God Is, and they happen to be a Baptist church, in which case, that's a really bold church name, and I'm here for it. It's a little difficult to say out loud in words.
Right.
But God, it's just enough to say God is.
That God is.
You don't have to add the and therefore. And pulling in our scripture from from Tuesday is this is going to go back to some ways motivation.
Yes.
Internally, are we practicing a religion of grace?
Right.
Not because that's what's going to win the world or whatever.
Right.
Because again, it's got like this is one of those like, you know, we have a Schrodinger's cat kind of problem, right? Because like you can't turn this too prescriptive because then we're just following into the old trap. Right. And it's got to be about motivation, but then like me telling you it's about motivation, like right.
It's the circle there, yeah. But are we creating new Pharisees, right? Like, is this the new Pharisees? It's not that the Pharisees were doing wrong. The Pharisees were doing lots of very good things, trying to follow the law, uphold the law, whatever. But they missed the point, and they missed that internal motivation. So they, veered off track.
It was, we're gonna be so righteous that we say this a lot. We're gonna be so righteous that they never send us into exile again.
Right.
Which at least part of that motivation is not bad.
Right.
But it was, I will be justified by my ability to follow the law.
Right.
And by the way, anyone who can't follow the law, even if anyone who can't follow the law from no fault of their own, they are lepers, they are a woman suffering from hemorrhage, they are in the house of a dead, we did this a couple weeks ago on the show too, of like, none of, like, these are just things that happen, like no one's fault. But then like, even when it is, like, no one's perfect and we all sin, and we're never, without, even in Wesley's semi-Pelagian world, without God's grace, we're never going to get there.
Right. That the best that we can do is still filthy rags. Our righteousness is still as filthy rags, right? This is why we need a religion of grace.
This is why we need a religion of grace, and we need to practice a religion of grace, which then that, again, creates a new righteousness. And so this is, what did we build that makes the church? I've been told that program's not going to save us. And so, I don't know. I think a theme I hear in this, and a theme I keeps coming back to, one of our relatively early shows, we had Sean and Sean on. And we were, Ask a Gen Z. We were talking to Sean the Gen Z of like, hey, what are you looking for in a church? Right? Mm-hmm. Like, what are you... You're a young person. What do you think, right? I mean, we ask this in some ways of all of our guests. Like, hey, like, what do you want the church to be? What's your vision, right? And what Sean said was, like, really punchy. Was just, like, be good. Be God. Right? Like, actually...
Like, actually be good. Be genuine.
Actually be good. Actually be genuine. Mm-hmm. David Zahl, in his book, talked a lot about Alcoholics Anonymous. Like, a lot about Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's something I think about a lot as well.
Right.
Of the, like, genuine community, the genuine grace-filled community that is Alcoholics Anonymous at its core. or at its best, rather. Like, this doesn't always work out, but it works out more often than it doesn't. Mm-hmm. And what David attributes that to, and I think it's a really interesting point, is, and it's why I like worshiping in prisons as well, right? Because it starts from that place of brokenness. No one gets to hide and act like they can be justified, they can self-justify against the law. Mm-hmm. Because if you've found yourself in Alcoholics Anonymous, you're an alcoholic. And you're at a place in your life where you can admit that.
Yes.
If you're worshiping in a prison, odds are you got to that prison. And even if outwardly you maintain your innocence, you're still wearing white, buddy. Mm. That, like, it starts from that place of brokenness. Yes. And starts from a place of, you know, David uses the logic of a hospital for sinners. Is this a school for saints or a hospital for sinners? Yes. And if there is an instructive in his narrative that I think is really helpful, other than, this is a religion of grace, duh, which is narrative, right? And true, it is, if we are thinking about structuring community, which in the end, like, as, you know, you and I as church leaders, like, that's our job. Like, we've got to, you know, I don't believe that, like, that church is worthless. Neither does David, by the way. Right. But it is, and it is live it. It's more live it and less talk about it, too. Yes. Like, and some of that is, are you, you know, we talk about this a lot, but, like, how honest are you being about your own whatever? Or are all of us only putting struggle in the past? Right. In which case now it's just, you know, what happens when, like, you have a new struggle or an old struggle comes back? Do you cover it up? Right. Are you not justified anymore? No. It turns out, like, God's grace can encompass that. Yes. But can we and can our communities? Yes.
Which that's also coming up in our sermon series, coming up because we get to talk about the struggles of David soon, right? Also connected to the scriptures that we're going through right now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I find, anyways, the book is Seculosity, How Career, Parenting, Technology, Food, Politics, and Romance Became Our New Religion and What to Do About It by David Zahl. I found it a really fascinating read.
It's a good read.
And a good read in a way to, like, again, just frame. I got really tired of the doom narrative because it didn't make sense, and it's not the triumphalist narrative, the, like, atheist triumphalist narrative, like everyone's just becoming more rational. No, anyone who has read modern parenting books, they are not becoming more rational. It is not. Oh my God, and the names. If I hear Bumpo one more time, I'm going to send this water bottle through my camera. It's not the triumph of rationality. Anyways, it's not that. So what is it? So I think David's book is really good at drilling into the what is it, right? Like that instinct, that deep need for salvation. Yes. That deep need for justification, to use a really good, his word and Wesley's word, right? Our need for justification is still there. We're just continually, as we have been, we're just remaking Christianity to look like ourselves. And now we're just doing it with food and parenting and dating and our jobs and busyness and whatever. Yes. And what we've always needed is grace. And as those structuring communities, it's about structuring communities of grace. Yes. Anyways, I could go on and on, because I love this stuff, and I like this book, and I really like Charles Taylor. But if you have your thoughts on your seculosities of choice, email us, thegoodnessofgodpod@gmail.com. That is thegoodnessofgodpod@gmail.com. This and everything else we do here in the Media Lab is made possible by Generous Innovators Grant by the Texas Annual Conference of the United Methodist Church. If you want more of us, it's Servants Now just about everywhere. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and servantsnow.org on the internet. We would love your help to make this show better. Write in. We would love your thoughts that way, but also like, comment, subscribe, share, give us 5-star reviews in Apple Podcast. All of that makes this show go further, makes it more sustainable. And go in peace to love and serve the Lord. And we'll see you next time.